We've realized that entrepreneurs do not save for their old age. What they would do is they would invest all the money that they accumulate over a period of time back into the business. So what they will do is they will sell the business at the end, and that will be their only income. Where we feel that buying our own property is actually a forced format of saving. That is your pension. So at the end of the period, you can either sell the business and keep the property, and you've got annuity income via the rental, or you can sell the property and use that then as your pension. But people don't save. So this is a good way to make sure that you're going to have something when you're old one day. Probably the most important thing when you invest in a property is where it's located. You can have a brilliant property, but it's in the wrong place. You're just going to lose out, in the long run. So we have learned rather spend a little bit more on a property, meaning it's more expensive, but it's in the right location. Because the next guy that wants that property will be prepared to pay the premium on that as well. So that is probably what we've learned foremost. When it comes to multi-tenanted properties where we've actually got tenants, picking the right tenant is crucial. When it comes to property ownership, to secure tenure is often very, very important, because the landlord has got all the aces up his sleeve. So at the end of the period, they can either not renew the lease, or they push up the rental to such an extent that it's affordable. So to actually secure it, it makes a lot of sense. Then it's a sound investment. It's a long-term investment, as long as you can afford the installment and the cost associated with it up front. There's no use buying a property you can't afford it. So if you can afford it, long term it will be a really good investment. You may suffer for the first 2 or 3 or 4 years, because that's normally the period that you pay more on the installment compared to the rental. But thereafter, it's a different story altogether.